Dare to enter Crow's Quill's books, where tales of forgotten realms and fearless souls come alive. Today's journey, Perigord, chapters 14 to 15 by Mark Lindsay. Will you uncover the truth hidden in the shadows? Chapter 14. Selene and Jason sat on matching leather seats in Walker's office. They both looked in awe at their surroundings. The walls were decorated in unusual artifacts: African shaman masks, Mayan weapons, and a Tibetan prayer cloth. They could see various swords and pistols, as well as a conquistador's helmet perched on a timber bust. There were framed photos and artworks from Russia, Indonesia, and Antarctica, just to name a few. On one side of the room was a large engraved timber shelf laden with strange sculptures, antique puzzle boxes, jars containing weird-looking specimens, and a large silver-furred monkey paw. Everywhere they looked, there was something weird and unusual. "Can you believe this stuff?" Selene whispered. "It's like the Twilight Zone, Warehouse 13, and the Outer Limits all rolled into one," Jason replied. Just then, Walker stepped into the office carrying a silver tray containing a fine china tea set. Placing the tray onto the small table, he proceeded to pour the hot beverage into cups. He looked up at Selene and Jason. "Milk?" They both nodded. Walker delicately poured the milk, then handed them their cups. "Thanks," they replied in unison. Walker dropped a couple of cubes of sugar into his cup and stirred, finally taking a sip with a sigh. Jason and Selene took their cue and drank also. Walker picked up a shortbread biscuit from the tray and dunked it in his tea before popping the soggy remains into his mouth. "I love these things," he said with a grin. Walker sat back in his chair and regarded both teenagers. "Well, Jason, since I've seen you last, you've nearly been expelled for fighting, befriended Ulysses Jaeger, and made an enemy of the local sheriff and his son." "Two of those things are not my fault," Jason replied. "And you've also gotten yourself a girlfriend." "Well done." "Selene and I are just friends," Jason said quickly. Selene glared at Jason before returning her gaze to Walker. "We both appreciate your help with Sheriff Rope, even though you are on his radar now too," Selene said. Walker let out a deep, grumbling laugh. "Sheriff Rope and I are old acquaintances. He's like a jackal preying on the weak, but don't underestimate him just because he's a bully," Walker said soberly. "He was scared of you, though," Jason replied. "That's because he knows he's down the pecking order in this jungle." "Thanks again, Mr. Walker, for your help and the tea," Selene said a little uneasily. "We should get going." Selene started to get up. "He called you Ulysses. Is that your name?" Jason asked candidly. Walker regarded Jason for a moment. "Yes, but only my close friends use it. Not just anyone, and especially not my employees," Walker stated. Selene sat back down. "I beg your pardon, you've lost me," Jason replied, confused. "I thought it pretty straightforward. I'm offering you a job," Walker stated. Selene and Jason stared at each other. "Why me? Why now?" Jason asked. "Why not?" "A job? Is this meant to be an interview or something?" Selene said, getting to her feet again. Walker sighed. "Yes and no. The screening process has been happening for the past couple of days," he said, a note of irritation creeping into his voice. "Listen, I need a part-time worker, grunt work, pay is minimal," Walker said. "But," Jason replied, "but you'll have access to the library whenever is practical, and some of its sections that are off-limits to the regular public," Walker said. "You never answered my question. Why me?" "Like I said, grunt work, minimum wage, and it's in a library. Besides, it's a prerequisite that you have to have at least a middle school entry reading level for the job. That's something that's lacking around these parts. I did a little bit of poking around, and I think you may be suited to the job, plus you're feisty. I like that in a minion. Are you interested?" "That depends," Jason answered. "On?" Walker asked. On the hours and some of those fringe benefits being extended to Selene here, Jason said, thinking that Walker would say no. Your hours would be 4 to 6, Monday to Friday, and 9 to midday Sunday. I don't have a problem with Selene sharing the benefits of the library, as long as she is accompanied by you, Walker stated. Jason got to his feet. It's a deal, he said, stretching out his hand out, which Walker shook. Great, you'll start tomorrow. You'll need to report to Ms. Jax at the front reception, and she will get you started on your orientation. We'll discuss the finer details later. You're free to go, unless you have any other questions. No, I'm good, Jason replied. Selene also got up from her chair. Thanks for the tea and biscuits, she said. You're welcome. Be sure to thank Ms. Jax on your way out. She was the one who baked them after all, Walker said. Jason and Selene had been wandering the aisles of the library for the past hour and were hopelessly lost within its labyrinth. This is impossible. How does anyone find anything here? Jason said in frustration. Selene nodded in response, looking up and down the aisle. I'm not even sure where we are anymore. I swear it's like a maze in here, she replied. Jason was scanning a shelf close by, then shook his head. A maze that keeps moving, he growled. The pair rounded a corner only to find Ms. Jax carrying a timber crate that was nearly as tall as she was. Jason and Selene were relieved to see her. Ms. Jax, Jason called out. She turned toward them, placing the crate down effortlessly. When she saw it was Jason and Selene, she smiled that big car grill smile of hers. How can I help Mr. Page? She asked in her deep, gravelly voice. We're having trouble finding a particular book, Selene said. Yeah, it's impossible to find anything in here when there are no numbers or index markers on the shelves or books. How do you do it? Jason inquired. I know where every book goes, Ms. Jax replied simply. Every book? Jason asked skeptically. She nodded. Every book, she repeated. Selene gave Ms. Jax one of those smiles you give a child who is having trouble grappling with adult concepts. How long have you worked here, Ms. Jax? She took her time thinking the question over, her attention focused solely on Selene. Jason pushed his toe against the box Ms. Jax was carrying and found to his astonishment that he couldn't budge it at all. Feels like at least 200. No, maybe 250 years, Ms. Jax said with a sigh. Jason and Selene laughed nervously. What book would you like to acquire? Ms. Jax asked. Jason pulled his pendant from out of his shirt. I'm trying to find information on this, Jason asked, showing Ms. Jax the pendant. She leaned forward, holding it up to the light, studying it intently before releasing it and regarding the pair. The books you require can be found 2 aisles over, down the south end. Top shelf, Ms. Jax said. Jason and Selene looked relieved at her straightforward answer and directions. Thanks, Jason said. And thank you for the biscuits as well, Selene added. Ms. Jax smiled a big, toothy smile that was both hideous and kind of endearing. You're welcome, Ms. Jaeger. If there is nothing else, I'd best get this into the storeroom, Ms. Jax replied, hefting the giant box into her arms and continuing on her way. Well, that was surprisingly helpful, Jason said as he started to make his way in the direction Ms. Jax had given them. I think she's quite sweet, Selene said. Love those tribal tattoos. Why am I not surprised? Jason said, shaking his head with a smile. They walked slowly home, Jason's backpack full of books. They were both sipping iced coffees they had purchased along the way. I nearly forgot to tell you, but when Ms. Jax was giving us directions earlier, I had a quick look at the box she was carrying, Jason said. It was bigger than her, Selene said, giggling. Yeah, and heavier as well. I couldn't budge it at all with my foot, Jason added. Selene stopped and regarded him. What are you saying? I'm saying that even if that box was empty, it probably weighed as much as you, he replied. That's weird. Maybe she's a mutant, like the Hulk, Selene commented, raising an eyebrow. The Hulk's not a mutant. He was doused in gamma radiation, Jason said. But that's not the point, he added. What is your point? Selene asked. The point is, doesn't she strike you as a little strange? Selene shook her head. We've all got something in us that makes us a bit of a freak. I think that the box may seem a little bit bigger to you in retrospect, Selene said. Maybe, Jason replied, not really convinced. Maybe you feel intimidated by a strong woman? Selene said, amused. Haha, really funny, Jason replied, frowning. Hey, just to completely change the subject, may I ask you a question? He said, suddenly serious. Selene casually took a sip of her drink. Sure, she replied happily. I'm a little confused. Do you live with your grandmother? If so, what about your mum and dad? Selene choked on her drink and stopped in her tracks. That's rather personal, don't you think? Selene's cheeks started to redden. Jason looked taken aback. Hey, I didn't mean to pry. I was just curious. I mean, I know what it's like, he said, now regretting he had decided to open his mouth. Really? You do you? Selene's voice was tinged with anger. Hey, relax, Jason said calmly before being cut off by Selene. Don't tell me to relax. All I meant was, I never knew my father, and I know what it's like not to have him around, Jason said. Selene pushed him in the chest, tears beginning to run down her face. You're an asshole, and you don't know anything, she said shrilly, before turning and running off. Selene, wait! Jason called out. Leave me alone, she yelled back. Jason stood and watched her disappear from view. Chapter 15. Jason lay on his bed, his headphones on, listening to Radiohead. A pile of books lay at his side. So far, everything he had read had turned up empty. Admittedly, his heart wasn't in it tonight. All he could think of was Selene's face, both furious and sad. Jason decided to take a break from his solitude and grab a snack downstairs. He slumped into a recliner, clutching a bowl of cereal. His mum was curled up on the couch reading a cheesy romance novel. The TV was on, but the volume turned down. Jason was slurping noisily on his cereal, unaware his mother had put down her book and was now observing him, a frown creasing her brow. After a moment, Helen cleared her throat. As much as I enjoy spending time with my favorite son, could you be any louder? It's quite distracting, Helen said, slightly annoyed. Jason smiled sheepishly. I'm your favorite, he replied. Helen groaned and threw a pillow at him, which he easily swatted mid-air. If you keep up that noise, I may have to reconsider that choice, Helen said, smiling. Harsh, but fair, Jason replied. Just then something caught Jason's eye on the TV. Mom, can you turn up the volume? Helen flipped the remote, and the sound came to life. A pretty brunette newsreader was standing outside the Perigord Museum, illuminated by the camera crew and a flashing red light in the distance. The bottom of the screen read, Late Breaking News. This is Athena Roberts reporting outside Perigord Museum, where local police and security are investigating the break-in of one of its exhibits, the works of its founding father, Heinrich Perigord. The works are made up of dozens of painted canvases that have been donated by various residents to coincide with Perigord's upcoming Harvest Festival in 2 weeks' time. As far as sources have confirmed, nothing has been taken, but many of the canvases have been roughly cut from their frames and littered throughout the exhibit. Just then, Sheriff Rope exited the building with one of his deputies. The reporter, Athena Roberts, trotted over to him in her high heels. Sheriff Rope, can you tell us what leads you might have in this destructive crime tonight? Sheriff Rope put on his best media face, but it was clear he was highly uncomfortable in front of the camera. At the moment, we have no leads into the perpetrators of this crime or their intentions, he said woodenly. Athena nodded. Is it true only Heinrich's works were vandalized? Yes, at present it appears only his paintings were the target, the sheriff said. Will this have an impact on the Harvest Festival? Athena added. The sheriff shook his head. Absolutely not. Now, if you'll excuse me, Ms. Roberts, I have a long night ahead. Sheriff Rope disappeared off camera. Well, as you can see, this has been a dark night in our great town's history. I'm Athena Roberts, keeping you informed as events develop. Helen switched off the TV. Who would have thought it? Helen said, surprised. Totally. A population of just over 3,000, and they have their own news crew, Jason replied, gobsmacked. Helen threw another pillow at him. This time it connected. I meant the vandalism, smartass, Helen said. Jason tossed the pillow aside. It's hardly breaking news, he conceded. For a small town it is. Besides, it looks as if the sheriff has a handle on it, Helen said optimistically. He's a dick, Jason muttered to himself, rolling his eyes. What was that? Helen asked. Oh, nothing, Jason shot back. Listen, can I get some advice? Sure, sweetheart, Helen replied, giving Jason her full attention. He sat up suddenly, all serious. I had an argument with Selene today, he said regretfully. What did you do? I didn't do anything. Well, at least not intentionally, Jason said, as Helen looked on dubiously. Jason relayed the events of the afternoon, everything except the run-in with the sheriff and his son. He figured she didn't need to worry. At least not yet, anyway. When he was done, he stood up and looked at her thoughtfully. Well, what do you think? He asked tentatively. Helen sat there a moment mulling it over before responding. I think first up you should have minded your own business, Helen said frankly. Jason exhaled sharply. But I don't think you've done any permanent damage. Once she calms down, she'll see that too, Helen said. You think? Jason asked. Helen nodded. You just have to give her time and space. And if she's half the young woman I think she is, she'll come around, you'll see, Helen said gently. Thanks, Mum, Jason replied, leaning over and giving her a kiss on the cheek. I think I'll turn in now. Night, he said, relief evident on his face. Good night, I'll see you in the morning, Helen said as Jason left the room. Helen returned to her book. Jason awoke with a start, another bad dream dragging him from his slumber. He looked about his room, slightly disorientated in the darkness, his breathing hard and fast. Once he realized where he was, he relaxed with a sigh, slumping back to his pillow. He looked across at the nightstand. His alarm clock's fluorescent face flashed 12:03. Jason stared at the ceiling for a while, realizing two things. Sleep wasn't going to happen anytime soon, and his stomach wasn't going to stop grumbling either. Jason pushed the fridge door shut with his foot, his arms laden with food. He carefully carried everything over to the kitchen bench and started preparing an epic sandwich. Slicing the leftover meat on the cutting board, he heard a banging sound coming from down the hall. Carefully placing the knife down, he suddenly heard further commotion and reconsidered picking the knife back up. He ventured quietly down to investigate the disturbance. Jason stealthily made his way through the dark, the sounds of books being thrown clearly coming from the study. As he approached, he could just make out the muffled voices of at least two individuals, and the strafing light of a torch bouncing off the walls. Jason stopped and propped near the entrance to the study, his eyesight becoming attuned to the darkness. He strained to hear any information he might glean from inside the room, unsure of how many might currently be in the house. He was afraid of others who might do his mum harm. Just then a gruff voice spoke up, one with an accent. God damn it, that door must be here somewhere. This was followed by a second voice, low and predatory. Shut up, brother, and keep looking. More smashing sounds were made by the dark figures within. Creeping forward, Jason attempted to gain a better view of the situation when one of the floorboards beneath him creaked. At any other time, the noise would have been ignored as nothing, but tonight it might as well have been a gunshot, the sound carrying through the house. Shit, Jason thought as movement and noise inside the study ceased. He stood flat against the wall, then decided he'd better act on it. I can hear you in there. I'm gonna give you 30 seconds to leave, then I'm gonna take that option from the table, Jason growled. He was starting to shake with fear, hoping like hell they took his threat seriously, afraid of what they might do if not. There was no movement from within the study. 1, 2, 3, Jason called out, and was greeted with silence. 4, I've called the cops. They are on their way. 5, 6. Jason was struggling to keep his voice from wavering. He forced himself to take a step forward. 7, 8, 9, I'm armed and will use it if I have to. Jason took another step, the silence crystal clear. 10, 11, 12, I'm not messing around. Jason took another step, then felt a presence behind him. He whirled around too late, as a crushing blow clipped him just above his temple. He crumpled to the ground, barely clinging to consciousness. He struggled in the dark to see his assailant, but it was all a blur. 2 figures emerged from the study and joined the third standing above Jason. It's just a boy, one of the figures said. Do you think he called the police? The other figure let out a low laugh. I'm pretty sure the cops aren't coming, he replied. Yeah, of course, the second figure said. Did you find it? The third figure asked. No, there's nothing here, the first figure said. Are you sure? The third asked with full authority. Of course we looked everywhere, the first figure replied quickly. Hello, Jason, a voice called from the top of the stairs. All 3 figures froze. Jason, is that you? The voice called again, a tinge of fear creeping into it. It's the kid's mom, the second figure said. Mom, don't come down, Jason called out weakly. The third figure knelt above Jason. Tonight's your lucky night, kid, the third figure said quietly, in what Jason now realized was a Russian accent. The figure raised a small baton, then brought it down in one quick movement, knocking him out cold. That seals today's tale in shadows. We hope Perigord has drawn you deeper into its enigma. Return soon to Crow's Quill's books, where the next chapter awaits, whispering secrets yet untold.